Okay, so in this one, it's gonna be about Sweden. It's gonna be if Sweden made like an empire sort of thing, like reclaimed their lands. I kind of enjoy this too. Don't know if you guys do though. But first thing they do, I'm just gonna put the capital down. Stockholm's right there. Is that they're gonna have a civil war. So purple is the Republic, and then the blue is the monarchs. So they're basically having a civil war. So the first thing that happens is that they have major wins. They recapture these islands and they start pushing the monarchs down in the south. But what they didn't know is, they also pushed them up in the north too. But what they don't know is, there's a lot of supporters everywhere for the monarchs because they really want Sweden to like be bigger because they just want to have like they're just done with being this. So people start rebelling around here, and it grows rapidly, meaning that they have to pull off some military from there and put it there, which allows them to push there. And then they also rebel around Stockholm, meaning that they're gonna have to retreat some more troops to defend Stockholm. So they also start building forts around Stockholm. And after a while, they eventually give that up. But the Finnish support decide that it's a perfect time to invade the northern part of that, and they're content. But the Swedish don't mind as long as they just win this civil war. So they ended up pushing there, but they lose this island, which eventually this part collapses, and that part collapses. Then eventually they're split up into two pieces, and their military up here is demolished. Now they have to retreat. Now they start retreating into Stockholm, and now that's the last thing remaining. And eventually it's captured. Is this it? Okay, that's cool. Now that Finland took that from them, they're much more stronger, so they're not going to go after them. Instead, they're going to have their first little war with Denmark, taking only 2 islands. And then once things settle around, they start electing a monarch. So their choices are a democratic one, which they instantly just throw out the window because they don't want to be a democracy anymore. They have a communist one, which they also throw out the window. Then they have a fascist one, which they think long and hard about until it gets to the into one of the spots in the election. And then you have a constitutional monarch, and then you have a full-on imperial monarch. So they start voting. The parts up here vote for the fascist monarch. Imperial is all down here. And then the constitution is just these two. So the winner, since most of the population is down by here, is the imperial. So now they're basically just an empire. So, now they changed their flag to this. The and there's the code if you want it. So they changed their flag to that. And now they're ready to start taking some land. So the first thing they do is they invade Norway and they take that from them, not much, but they just take it. Then Denmark and Norway make a pact where it's the Western Scandinavian Pact, basically just an alliance, and both of them are basically around the same strength as Finland, so they can compete with Sweden and potentially even destroy them. So Sweden doesn't want to expand there anymore, so they look over by here and they invade Estonia, which goes well, and then they have a peace treaty. So the peace treaty is that they only get these islands. So the Estonians lose those islands, but they're fine because they have these. But that isn't going to be the last time where Sweden invades them. Now they look somewhere else, and they don't really find anywhere else to invade, because if they invade Iceland, they don't really, their coast is right there, and since Denmark and Norway have control of that, they can see that as a threat, and also since Denmark still has like that as a colony basically, well, it doesn't matter because it's weak, but Iceland could join the Western Scandinavian Alliance. Now Finland decides to go on their own because they say that they're still, because they say that they're the strongest Scandinavian country, which is true at this time, but not for long. Now, since they got like a little bit more population, they start recruiting them for the military. And what they do is they do a surprise invasion here, taking that and annexing them. Now the Finnish doesn't like that, so they decide to share the islands, which the Swedish doesn't like that, but they're like, okay, at least we get one. It's better than nothing. Now, what they do is they decide to ask the Finnish if they can have these provinces back, and they decline. So they say, can we at least have this one? And they like, okay, it's useless anyways. But it's gonna be useful for the Swedish eventually. Now they start by invading Estonia again. Now, as soon as they land here, Estonia just surrenders because like, there's no point. So now they eventually give them these islands back because they're now puppeted, meaning that they can have Swedish troops over here, which they use that and they take that. And then they invade here, which Germany sees that as an advantage to take that, to take Memel. Now instability in Kaliningrad makes Kaliningrad rebel, which then Germany just takes it. And the Russians just let it go because like they just like, okay, well, it's it's split off from our mainland, and we have trouble sending supplies to there, so we don't really need it. Except for the manpower it had. Anyway, so now the Baltics is owned by the Swedish Baltics, because that's the puppet name now. Now Russia decides to annex Belarus. And they also annex this part here, as well as this of Georgia. And then they take this from Kazakhstan. Now, the Swedish declare war on Finland, and a surprise attack goes on until they're pushed back to there and it's a stalemate. And then they ask for their puppet to come in. So they ended up taking that and then eventually this, meaning that they have to retreat from that. And eventually, after a long war, it's over. So now the peace treaty is the Swedish Baltics take that island and then Sweden just takes the rest. Now these two are really shitting themselves. So they ask Iceland to join, and they're like, okay. But what they didn't know is Sweden already is invading Denmark. Not Denmark, Norway. And they take all these islands from them. And now they insist on joining Denmark. So now Denmark takes all of Norway. And then Iceland, seeing that happened to Norway, they're like, okay, let's join you again too. I don't want to be taken over by the Swedish. The Swedish are aggressive now. But then the Swedish see that as a threat. So they start invading up the northern part of here. Eventually pushing down to Oslo. Eventually capturing it. And then they naval invade Iceland, taking that. And now Denmark's all on their own, which they eventually just die. So now the Swedish have a massive empire, but their puppet has a revolt in Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, which quickly gets out of hand. So, before all of it's gone, they annex the rest. And they start pushing. They eventually take Riga, and Lithuania's capital, which I can't remember what it is. Don't mind what I'm doing. Poland loves it, right? Right? Yeah, the Germans also want to do something. They want their imperial days back too, because they're kind of jealous. So does Austria. As well as Hungary. there's more. And then they eventually oof Ukraine a little bit. A little bit. And then Austria and Hungary, not Austria-Hungary. Austria and Hungary start making a deal where they would unite with each other, reforming the Empire of Austria-Hungary. Because both of them were represented under one empire and they both wanted each other's land, so they're like, how about we do this? So they both agree to it. And then they'll conquer the world. No, I'm just kidding. Now back up here, Sweden invades this part of Russia. And after a long bloody war, there's a peace treaty and Sweden gets this and now they're content. Or are they? They eventually invade these islands of Britain, and Britain can't do anything because they don't want their whole nation fallen. So here's the Swedish Empire. Oh wait, did I mention that Germany bought that from them? Yeah, so there's the Swedish Empire now. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, I just feel the urge to